This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
So in lieu of having a chair, I'm going to call the meeting of the CPA Committee for January 18th to order. And the first item of business is to elect a chair and vice chair. Take it away.
So I know, talking to some of the members, they're a little, can you outline for the responsibilities of the chair?
Yeah, so primarily the chair is responsible for running the meeting, coordinating with the city through the planning department, all the activities to make sure that the agendas are set, that they are aware of what's coming up to the, like if an application is submitted and there's reviewing the application before the meeting so they understand what it's about. Sometimes there's some interactions with applicants outside of the meetings. People sometimes come to the chair to ask questions, or they'll come to the planning department to speak to me. Infrequently, there's sometimes phone conversations with city staff about projects, and occasionally, if you know, so in the past when Dan was the chair, he was present at all of the CPA meetings, or sorry, the city council meetings and the finance subcommittee meetings, but there's no requirement to do that because Tom Peak, as a member of the city council and finance subcommittee, can make reports to those groups on behalf of this CPA without being the chairperson. And I think that's about it for, and it's not a huge lift outside of the meeting and doing a little bit of prep before the meeting.
And I'll say, for as far as the vice chair, there's very little involved with that, except in the case that the chair is not there, and then you run the meeting. And in my experience, it's happened once in years. So there you go. All right.
Okay, well, so have we made it, do we need to make a motion to open nominations?
No, I think you don't have to be that formal.
Okay.
If there's any nominations, we can.
You've been sitting in the wings for years. It's your call if you want it, and if not.
Well,
fine.
I would certainly do it. But thank you, Jamie, for saying what was involved in it. My only hesitation was, the amount of time involved and sort of beyond the running of the meeting. But yeah, I also, if there's other members, both here or virtually, that are interested, I'd certainly entertain that as well. No.
I'll help out however I can, but I just got here, so I won't presume to, whatever.
I think, I guess I don't do it separately, but I think we nominate Scott for chair and then just for vice chair.
It can be your backup.
I would appreciate
I'll be your
that.
wing person.
I would actually really appreciate that. I think that'd be great.
Okay.
I say we take advantage of the people that aren't here and we put them back.
That is a good point. Well said, Andy.
Should I keep running it? Okay.
Well,
So
also I'll make that motion. I don't know if we can do it. We need to do it separately or as one.
probably
Probably
do them
together,
separately.
Okay, so I'll make a motion for nominate Scott as chair. I just need a second, I assume.
Second.
Okay.
You're still running the meeting
Right.
right now.
So now you can.
You
not
keep
you,
going.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Actually, sorry, I should have done a roll call vote.
Oh, yeah.
Aye.
Jamie, do a roll call vote. Andy,
Aye.
Greg,
Aye.
Jay is absent. Jessica,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
John is absent. Ken,
Aye.
Scott,
I'll abstain.
okay, and Tom.
Aye.
Great. Motion passes.
Thank you, committee. I appreciate your support of either not wanting to do it or not thinking I've messed up things so bad in the past. So that's, a good mix of the two. All right, Jamie, I'll relieve you. Ready? Any nominations for vice chair of the CPA committee?
I'll nominate Jess Allen as vice chair.
I'll second that.
Excellent. And we should vote on that.
All right, Andy,
Aye.
Greg,
Aye.
Jay's absent, Jessica,
I'll abstain.
Joe,
Yes.
John is absent, Ken,
Aye.
Scott,
Aye.
and Tom.
Aye.
Motion
Excellent.
passes.
Got your back.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'll lean on that back, I'm sure, in the coming year. All right, approval of minutes from December. Does anybody have anything to note about the minutes before we vote on them? I actually have one thing to note.
Yeah.
In the minutes, it says that something like remote attendees are in italics.
Yeah.
And they're actually in bold and not in italics.
I can adjust that.
There you go. It just happened to notice.
I want to change my vote.
Anybody want to,
I'll make a motion to
thank
approve the
you.
minutes of 12/13/23.
I'll
I'll
second.
second.
Give it to Andy.
Okay.
all right,
Roll
we should
call
be roll call vote.
Andy,
Aye.
Greg,
Aye.
Jay is absent, Jessica,
Aye.
Joe,
I'll abstain, but I'll submit minutes for the 14th since I was here on the 14th.
oh,
I came here the 14th, I was there.
yeah.
Oh, because we
Sorry.
maybe changed it to Wednesday. Sorry about that.
That was my fault.
Ken,
Aye.
Scott,
Aye.
and Tom.
Abstain.
Thank you. All right, that passes 5.
Minutes that are approved, and I just want to note as chair that I just appreciate all the work you put into the minutes. They're extensive every meeting, and I don't know how you do that with everything that goes on. So thank you, Jamie.
You're welcome.
There you go. Public speak. I do. Public speak. I don't think anybody's here that's not on the committee. So, all right, let's move on. City officials.
So I don't have anything to discuss that's not on the agenda.
Okay. All right. Count balances.
So they are unchanged from where they were last. And I don't have them pulled up because I was still trying to figure out which computers are doing what. But essentially, we have no money other than the $100,000 earmark in the affordable housing. And it's actually 190,000 in affordable housing and less than the 120,000 that was 118,000 in the undesignated, but that was for the discussion last month to keep that unavailable for spending.
That'll probably come up again in the next order of business, which is the discussion of minimum recommended undesignated fund balance policy, which also I think does connect to the next thing on the agenda, which is the grant application schedule, because of what Jamie just mentioned. We don't have any money. Before we get into this, I want to recognize that I think we're actually in a lot of ways, we're a very different committee than we've been for my whole time here. And I think for most people, I don't know Greg, I don't know if you're the longest standing, but I mean, I think I've been on for 7 years and we've had one vote that wasn't unanimous. That wasn't just great, here's the money. And that's a great committee to be on. And that was really nice for a long time, for years. And now we really are a different committee. Like we're going to have to think about this differently. So I want to get us all kind of in that mindset before we get to this next discussion, because I think that's just important to recognize. My immediate thought here would be to go to Greg, but if anybody have any hands on the recommended undesignated fund? Greg, I know that in the last meeting, you brought up that you thought it would warrant a robust discussion.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we're in a different, I think you've summed it up. We're sort of in a different place. So, what's the question on the table?
So in the recommended undesignated, before we get to the grant application schedule, which I think is really tied to our financial situation. In the last meeting with, about the recommended minimum, I mean, part of this is I think you have the best hold on this, but also you sort of accepted what was recommended, but also said, I think this would warrant a bigger discussion. And so I wanted to hear what was behind that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good for everybody to recognize that the balances are not necessarily cash bank balances, right? That's just like a that kind of came out in last meeting, that there is a little bit of a, you know, distinguishing between fund balances and restrictions. We're looking at dollars on a page, but that doesn't necessarily mean it ties back dollar for dollar into a specific bank account. It was acknowledged to me in December that we actually had a specific bank account though. So there is a bank balance specific to the CPA committee, which is kind of good for us to know. I think one of the things that I was just thinking about was like a dollar amount versus a percentage, right? Because I think we were thinking that, and I don't know what the right percentage would be, but you know, obviously this is, CPA is a property excise tax. So as that changes, or the volume or the property values change, maybe it would be appropriate for the minimum to change with it. So that was the thinking around maybe setting some sort of percentage basis rather than a fixed number. And that's about as far as I got. I haven't actually looked. I don't, you know, maybe we'd have a better idea of, because we're talking, well, we had a number on the table for a minimum. What would that be for percentage if we're looking at the amount that we expect for CPA dollars this year? And I'm curious what that percentage would be, and maybe we could start the discussion with that if people were interested in a percentage approach.
So the 120,000 came from, because it was essentially a fourth set aside. What we had set aside for each of the 3 set asides was about 120,000. So taking a fourth 10% to kind of set aside in the undesignated account, so we have that flexibility to
Contingency fund, basically,
yeah.
is what it ends up.
And in most years, we never spend even close to that, so it wouldn't really matter. It's only this one year, maybe next year and the year after will be low balances. The mayor's office is working to come up with like a policy with the financial people in the city, and then CPA would be asked to vote on that policy. But in the time between when that policy is created and now, especially as next month we'll be working on the budget, sort of just an idea for like what we're comfortable setting aside, keeping set aside, and whether or not the CPA wants to do what's prudent and best practices and keeping $120,000 roughly reserved, or whether or not he says whatever we want. And
So just for my benefit, set aside for what?
To make sure we're not spending money we don't have, essentially.
Okay.
so going back a bit, when we set the budget for the CPA,
Right.
we don't have those funds. We
Sure.
set the budget in February. It's approved in, let's say, June.
Right.
It takes effect in July. Starting in September is when we collect the first revenue.
Yes.
And so in a good year, we collect way more revenue than we budget. And at the end of the fiscal year, when the accounts close, all that extra money comes back to the CPA and it's not a problem. In a bad year, we may not collect all the money we expected to get. And then the city has to make up, but that's fine if we don't spend our entire budget.
Okay, that
But
makes
if we
sense. Thank you.
spend the entire budget and we have undesignated funds, we can go into the undesignated fund and bail ourselves out. But in this case, we are now running through the undesignated account. And we had a bad year. We didn't get all the revenue that we expected. And we're looking at like, well, it's kind of still too soon to know whether or not we're gonna even get all the revenue we expect. If we get all the revenue we expect, then it will turn out that we could have spent
More.
all of the undesignated fund, but otherwise we're,
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
I like this percentage idea, and I like the idea of setting aside 10% for a couple of reasons. One, it's consistent with what we're setting aside under the different pockets that we have. And in my world, when you are doing construction, you have a construction contingency, which is typically 10%. So to me, it seems like it's a good number to use rather than setting a specific amount. Make it consistent with what's being set aside for affordable housing, open space, historic every year. And that is our, that's our contingency. Now, the question is, what happens if we have a couple of great years and that builds up? Then how do we redistribute that contingency? How do we, you know what I mean? Like it shouldn't just sit there forever, right? So I guess that's the question, is like, what happens after a couple of good years?
So, sorry.
I would assume that if this year we propose a budget that has a $120,000 set aside for each of those accounts, then we just need to note in the undesignated fund not to go below 120. And then the following year, if it's 140, that note just goes to 140. It's not like we're then now at 260,
Right, okay.
right?
Percentage would.
Okay.
It would be
it'd be part of it.
the
It would
old
just change,
earmark
okay.
would just
Yeah.
sort of go
Okay.
away.
All right.
That makes sense to me.
I mean, that's how I would propose to
Yeah.
keep it, short of any
Simple.
policy.
Yeah.
So what I heard from you, Jamie, was mayor's office in conjunction with the financial people of the city are coming up with guidelines. When are those? That's gonna be, who knows? Okay,
Could be.
in the meantime, we've already essentially said we're gonna not spend the 120,000 we have. So it seems like at this juncture, we could say, okay, maybe we would recommend, like, I guess the question would be, are we gonna change anything right now, given a percentage? Like, that seems like it could be a good recommendation. Would you be recommending changing something right now? No. So if that's the case, it seems like what our action might be, would be just hold on to the money we have, essentially say, that's what we're doing right now, wait for the mayor's guidance. And then when that comes back, then we can sort of readdress this discussion. Does
When do we
that,
have to start setting the budget for next year?
It'll be next month,
Next
next
month.
meeting.
okay,
So
well,
next-
that's when we'd have to do it.
Right,
So
but
next month.
But
Yeah.
we don't set a budget for the undesignated account.
But we could, I mean, that's the thing, is like, we earmark $250,000 for Old Town Hall every year, and that's like a set aside that we already kind of take out.
Mhm.
So,
Right,
See, I would question even doing that at this point.
okay,
because the undesignated account is just a roll up of all of the unspent money from
I
previous
see.
years. And it's not a budgeted
I see.
account. It doesn't. Yeah, so it's a little, so we'll talk about it. And
Sure,
it definitely relates to the budget, but it's not,
I see.
Gonna
Okay.
actually affect.
It doesn't have its own category. This
Okay.
couldn't have its own category.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does anybody want more discussion? It seems like we've got our next steps with this. Does anybody have anything more to say on this? All right, that sounds good. I'm gonna move.
Greg's got something.
Greg, did you just raise your hand virtually?
I did. Can you hear me?
All right, excellent. Yes.
I have nothing to add. I think it's a great plan. And I have to go off the call. So
Did you, I was rushing because I wanted to see if you had anything to say before you left on the grant application schedule, which is the next thing, because I value your opinion and I wanted to get it on that. And if you wanted to say something and then sign off, that'd be terrific.
I really don't have a strong opinion, and I trust in the wisdom of this group, and your new leadership, Scott. So I'm gonna let you all carry on, and I'll hear about it later.
Thank you,
All
Greg.
right. Thank you, Greg.
Take care, guys.
See ya.
See you later.
One thing as in the role of new leader, one thing I wish I should have done sooner is to welcome Tom Pugh to the committee. I should have done that second. That should have been my first thing after that. But anyway, it's a great committee, so we're glad to have you on.
Happy to be
Thank you
here.
for being here. All right, so grant application schedule. As mentioned earlier, things are different now. It was really easy to just keep doling out money every month when we had it. So, I got some thoughts on this, but I'd love to hear from other members of the committee before I say anything. Joe?
So is it, I mean, I lost track. Right now, is it quarterly or is it as they come in?
So
As someone wants?
it's, I think, look, Jamie, correct me if I'm wrong. As of 2020, it's basically been as they come in up to the committee's discretion. Back in 2016, from 2016 to 2020, officially it was quarterly.
Right.
What would happen is people would come in and they'd say, oh, we have this going on. Is there any reason to delay? And we'd say as a committee, well, we got the money. It's a good project. Let's just vote on it now. And so the quarterly, it didn't really matter. We didn't, as a committee, I think we just sort of saw, we didn't need to stick to that because we weren't, in essence, these projects weren't competing against each other. Now they are, right? I mean, it seems pretty clear that we're gonna vote no to some things. We're gonna vote things are gonna not get as much money as they request, just because it appears, and I hope to be wrong in this, it appears that there's gonna be more worthy applicants. The amount of money that worthy applicants are applying for is gonna be greater than we have. And so that's why we went away from quarterly, but that's why it would be like, maybe we need to go back to something where we're looking at things in competition with each other.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense, especially the financial spot we're going into. I think annual is just too long, so I guess I would think quarterly.
Okay.
But yeah, that's my thought.
Yeah. So would you say is it the more people are applying for the things, or that we're seeing a dip in revenue, or both?
A combination. It's like costs have gone way up for every
Mhm.
construction project.
Yeah.
The projects that we're seeing are housing. We're seeing a lot of housing projects that have been in a queue for a very long time.
Right.
And housing is just incredibly expensive to
Mhm.
build.
Yeah.
And we are seeing, I don't know, we're seeing more applications, but the applications we've seen historically have been pretty low value, or where we've had a very high value project, it's been one expensive project at a time. And now we have 3 housing projects that are all like, we came for money, now we're gonna ask for more money and more money and more money over the next 3 to 5 years. And
So,
The major project.
question,
Oh,
quick question.
Yeah.
The quarterly, when we think of quarterly, it'll give us a better picture of a bunch of projects or requests that come in, and we can look at them and have them compete against each other, or is that why we do it?
Competing against each other is maybe a misspeak. What I really mean is that because we're gonna have less money, we're not gonna be able to fully fund everything.
Right.
They're not really competing against each other, but they are applying for the same pot of funds.
Right.
And so it would enable the committee to make our best choices based on what we see at that time with what in
Okay.
relation to what's available.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
And Tom, the other project, as far as what I think has drawn this, it's because the housing projects, three big housing projects, right? And a big historic preservation project.
Yeah.
Or the old town hall. That's been a big, so yeah, projects have been bigger. I think that's the biggest thing. Yeah, the pool, although the pool has been in, I think, the realm of what we've seen as far as like the amount of.
Yeah, up until recently, I think the largest amount that I've ever seen was like $300,000
Right.
as an ask, and that was for Cottage Street over here.
Yeah.
Now we have Main Street project, which is asking for $600,000 for just acquisition. That's not even for construction.
Right.
That's just for buying the land.
Right. So they're gonna
So,
be back then. probably. For them, they're presumably gonna be back.
and then they'll come
Correct.
back for construction line.
Correct.
So, so yeah, the costs are just through the roof.
Anything else on the, anybody want to say anything more about the grant application schedule?
I have a couple
Yeah.
questions, actually. So if we go to a quarterly, which I'm leaning towards and in favor of, I guess the question is, do we then take our budget and quarter it out for like what's available for the first quarter, what's available in the second quarter, what's available in the third quarter? So for instance, what if somebody comes in with an application and it is requesting like 50% of what we have available? Are we gonna say, are we gonna determine, okay, we can't give you that much right now? Do we wanna set that in stone ahead of time, or do we wanna have some flexibility? I just don't wanna get to a point where we're in the fourth quarter and we have no money left.
Yeah,
And then that puts an unfair, burden on those applications just because of timing. So you're either gonna drive everybody to come in the first quarter and ask for everything. So how do we think about stretching out the money, or, I don't know. Just a question. I don't have an answer.
my inclination with that, I'm always in favor of flexibility. I think as a committee, this is an area that will be new for us. I think we need to really put on our, we need to look at it with that lens of, okay, it's February or March, we're voting on projects January through March. If we're voting, 40% of the budget, we got to know like that could come back to bite us, because later on, and that has to be part of our vote. This has part of our thinking with our vote. I personally wouldn't be in favor of putting hard, fast rules on like we're spending this quarter of the budget then and this quarter, because I think the flow isn't necessarily like that. But I think it is something we're going to need to think about. And I think that with the one thing I want to make clear too, I think with the quarterly, it's not that we're still meeting every month, right? So we're still hearing applications for 3 months. It's that that gives us at that time probably several applications to look at and say, okay, this is, to be able to think that through of, okay, this is how much we'd be spending for that.
Yeah,
So
I would see it like everybody gives, the applicants give their presentation that first meeting. And the second meeting we discuss, and then the third meeting we vote. And then you're on to the next round.
That's right. It goes by fast, doesn't it?
Andy had his hand raised.
thank you. Sorry, I didn't see Andy. Andy.
Oh, sorry. So question, when can we actually start giving money?
Well, I believe we essentially don't have money till July. Is that right, Jamie?
Yeah, with the exception of the affordable housing set aside, that's 190,000 in it, of which 100,000 is earmarked for the project that's at the end of the agenda. So there's
We
like
basically can't give money for the next 6 months anyway.
Correct, I believe, yeah. But wait, I didn't say that again, Jamie, because I thought we had gone through that in the last affordable housing.
So in the last one, the Ferry Street project we approved them for $500,000, but they're taking $100,000 in FY 24, 200 in FY 25, and 200 in FY 26. So there's $190,000 in the balance for the affordable housing, and $100,000 of that is earmarked for the town lodging housing project.
That we previously earmarked?
Correct.
Okay.
So there's $90,000 in affordable housing that's sort of doesn't have a project associated with it right now, but in FY 25, that plus another $110,000 will go to the Ferry Street project.
So in theory, we've got 90K to spend at this point,
But only for housing.
but only for housing. So I mean, I'm all for the quarterly thing, but I mean, right now, fact being fact, we can't give money. People are going to be presenting for the next 6 months. in theory, without us being able to make, I mean, we're gonna create a list probably, right? With priority, we're gonna have one heck of a meeting in July.
Well, and I think that's a really good point, and it's important to, I think we need to, I mean, when people apply, you're the first,
Right,
and I think it's important to let people know that too, that like, so they don't come.
also, I would put it, the caveat is that we don't have the funds available until July 1. We're gonna set the budget in February. And so we'll know by the March meeting how much we're anticipating to have in each of the set-asides and all the rest of it. So you could start, let's say, start around in April, vote in June with the appropriations getting submitted to council in July. They'll be funded under next year's budget.
Yeah. Okay. Andy, did you hear
Isn't
that?
that kind of like spending money you don't have?
Well, we wouldn't be actually spending it until it came in. But you're right. I mean, it is approving money that we anticipate, and we've already done that too, right?
From the sounds of
We
it,
already- we're doing that with,
And that's what
Old Town Hall.
that's what we do all the time here,
Yeah.
is spending the money that hasn't
Well,
actually been received, so.
It's all of municipal
I mean, but
finance.
that's why
when you think
that's
about
why
it.
it's budgeted, because it's,
Yeah.
we're expecting to have it, so.
How does that work with council process? Can they vote to appropriate CPA money that's not available until July?
well, no, they wouldn't be, Jamie's saying they wouldn't, if we did April, May, June,
Oh,
They wouldn't vote.
We
we would submit it to them, they would vote on it in July once it actually.
I got it, okay.
But I don't necessarily like, I'm trying to think if there's been a case like this, but I don't know that there'd be anything necessarily stopping us from approving an appropriation, even if the cash is gonna be there in a month, like, I think that probably, we could probably say, yeah, okay, you can appropriate that. And then those funds sometimes don't transfer the next day.
Right.
So I think there wouldn't necessarily be anything wrong with us approving that and then the appropriation actually occurring at such point as it can.
Right, I know that Hetel won't sign off, the auditor will not sign off on an appropriation request if the funds aren't available. So it won't get from my office to the city council unless the auditor says those funds are there. So if I submit the appropriation in June with an FY23 account, like FY23 accounts on it, she'll say, there's no money there, we can't do this.
Right. So, well, that probably explains why I haven't seen much of that. But it has happened before that there's been like a thing that we've approved and then it didn't actually end up happening. We signed off on a capital expense and then the project didn't actually happen. So
Right.
it's like, it is possible to do that. It's not like that immediately goes into effect. But yeah, that sounds good. Just for what it's worth, I think this is a good idea. I think it's actually reflective of what we're trying to start doing a little bit more of on the finance committee, of trying to be able to get a broader view of what things are coming towards us so that we can understand better the merits of various requests in the context of other requests. And so it makes sense to me. I just got here, so take that for what it's worth.
Well, we appreciate it.
It's gonna be interesting to see what kind of mentality this brings, because it's just sort of alluded to, is everyone gonna wanna submit early? And then do we say to the applicant, you didn't make this, come back for the next quarter? I mean, it's gonna be interesting. I mean, I don't know. I don't think
Well,
that's.
I was just thinking,
just
like, we
gonna
would
see.
say, like, oh, you're asking for, 600,000, we'll give you 300 now, come back in next quarter and
Right,
ask for
right.
the rest of it.
So, Jamie, when do you know exactly how much money we are going to get? Because I know it always seems, oh, we're waiting for the state and this, that. When do we have that hard, fast number?
Never.
Yeah, I would go with never. I mean, so we get the state match usually mid-November, and that's for the current fiscal year,
Okay.
which is almost 9 months after we budgeted for that match.
Wow.
And so usually so technically the books close on June 30th, and then it takes the auditor in a good year, 2 months to close all of the city's different accounts and actually close out that fiscal year that ended on June 30th.
Mm.
And at that point, that's the number, that's when we know how much money we actually got in the
When
previous.
we've already spent it.
Yeah, and when it's certified by DOR, that's like,
Right.
that's when it's known for sure. But by like the time we're starting to do the budgets, we have a pretty good estimate on the revenue we receive. We'll have had 2 quarters of tax receipts by the end of January, I guess, and then those will have taken some time to get processed, and so then we can kind of, assuming we know what the adjustments from the assessors, what the tax rate recap is going to be, and we have much better, it's a finer grained estimate. So midway through the year, this is the.
Tom, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, but now I can't remember what for.
All right. So a couple things that I'm hearing.
Now I remember.
Yeah, you
sorry.
remember, great, go.
The one thing is, I think with a lot of like the city council rules, like we have these rules and then we also basically give ourselves permission to break the rules if we unanimously agree that it's definitely necessary to do so. So that would be my one thing about this is like, do we want to consider something like is there a case that anyone can think about where it actually really, really matters that this happen right now and not in 2 months? And do we just, is our policy at that point like, well, you're out of luck, or is there some qualifications where we would say, no, we will actually take this one on an emergency basis, or is that just going to make everyone want to present their stuff as an emergency? It's just a thought. I guess we have some time to
it's a
figure it
really
out.
good thought, and it certainly has occurred in the past. And that's what I think led us to abandoning the quarterly in the first place, because we were able to accommodate that. And sorry, what would you say? Oh,
Andy has the same case.
those electronic hands are hard for me. Andy.
Yeah, we've basically been living on the changing that policy for the last 3 years, right?
Yeah.
Since 2020, we've been basically doing changing the rule, or just adjusting the rule when necessary. So I would think no matter what we vote on tonight, it's still going to be, if we feel there's a project that's worthwhile, that we're going to adjust the rules to match that project.
That's my understanding.
Yeah, typically I've seen it's mostly city applications tied to a grant. That's often where I see the rules are being broken, is that the planning department needs the CPA match for a grant application, and that grant is due in 3 weeks, and we need a letter of support. That's the most consistent rule breaking I've seen.
And I think it's easy to break those rules when we don't feel like there's actual repercussions.
Right.
And I think now there is repercussions in that it affects another applicant who might be doing that. So I think you're totally right. I think it's certainly done in the past. I think that's what we'll continue to do. I think as a committee, we just got to keep it in mind that there's more effects of that now. I guess another piece of that, I think, is the reason to go to, if we're going to quarterly, I think an important part of this is just communication to the public. That when, that we're giving them an expectation, and certainly when everybody's coming to you, Jamie, that there's an expectation that this is how we're going to try to do business. So that they know what to expect when people are coming to grants, especially applicants that have come in the past few years that we've always basically seen them and sometimes voted right then if it was small, or it's said, almost always voted the next meeting. So I think it's important to communicate that out for anybody that's approaching about CPA.
Which ties to the calendar, right? Yeah. So is that on the agenda? The
Yeah, so
calendar?
there are 2 meeting schedules that were submitted as drafts. One was showing the cycles or the next 12 meetings with their submittal deadlines, and then as business as usual, and then the others switching to a quarterly cycle.
So I
kind
see that on the new business. Should we just vote on whether we want to do this quarterly and then go on just to keep this?
Yeah, sure.
Is there, I think we can fine tune this as we go, but I think it's important to just say what sort of we want as a committee, and then we can keep moving. Does anybody want to make a motion about the grant application schedule? I don't know if we necessarily need to, I think it's probably good to vote to adopt the,
We can do things,
Do we
By
have to
motion?
update our plan?
we should be doing that too, and
Isn't that what we do
Well, we
in
could-
January?
we could make a motion to sort of go back to the 2016 rules, operate under that, and then we're gonna go to that plan, when we update the plan, go back.
we could also, like, if we want to go in that direction, then I can work with you, or I can put out some draft language to update the 2020 rules back, because I was just taking a look back at them, and like, I don't know that the 2016 rules necessarily reflect what the committee wants
Either.
either. It might be something that's like a little bit.
Yeah.
you know,
All right, so you think if you could put together some draft language, we have a common I mean, I don't know if we need, if anybody disagrees, this is time to say it, but if we have a common understanding of wanting to go quarterly with kind of the caveat that there might be times, but we know that that's going to affect things. Jamie would put together some draft language and then we would approve that at the next meeting. Does that sound good to everyone?
Yep.
Andy, does that sound good? You can nod or thumbs up. Perfect.
Thumbs up.
Awesome. All right.
Andy raised his hand 3 times.
Raise your hand
Is
3
that clapping?
times for yes. 4 times for, all right. Sounds good. All right. I think,
Can I ask
yeah,
one?
please.
So how do you envision this? Do you frequently get these things in the mail? Are you going to call them and say, we can't
I
address?
I almost never get an application like a cold, just
Directly,
like
okay.
usually
Planning or
people
something?
come to me and talk to me or have a conversation with Jeff, or
Okay,
there's a lot of conversation before anyone usually submits, so
okay.
um
Won't be a surprise to me.
it won't be a surprise. I'll update the application. Once we approve the language, I'll update the application form, I'll update the guidance that we put out, so it'll all clearly say it.
You can even put it on the website,
It'll
just
be on the
with
website, yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good,
Applications are accepted quarterly.
And you can communicate to Jeff, so he's communicating that too. Just make sure you know,
Yeah,
you know, I want him making sure he's doing the right thing.
yeah, I'll make sure they say he's communicating,
Exactly.
All right.
All right. Anything else on that?
Nope.
Great. Lathrop on hold. We heard a great presentation from Lathrop Communities for a very worthy project. I don't think anyone's here right now. Is there anything more to say on it?
I emailed with Barbara last week or 2 weeks ago.
Barbara was the woman who spoke?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I told her to come back in May.
Great.
So we're just gonna, if it's okay with everyone, we'll just keep carrying that as on hold until May.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Or I can take it off the agenda until then and then put it on in May, whichever makes more sense.
You're the chair. You get to decide. It's your first big decision about an agenda.
Well, thoughts? I don't know if it should be in continued business. It almost seems like we need, well, keep it on. Keep it on. It's probably good for us to just know to have a
If you
visual
want to
of the
write on
things
there, do you want it to say like on hold until May?
until May. Yeah, I
That
mean,
way it doesn't look to the public like this poor individual is being
yeah,
put through the
put through just
ringer
on
by the
hold.
CPA.
I do have a question though. Did you say they are going to, Barbara told me to resubmit in May?
I told her to come back in May.
Back in May.
Because she
So,
submitted and
They're,
presented.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that-
I don't think they're gonna be changing their proposal. It's just,
Okay.
and they don't need the money until July 1st. Anyway, and they're putting in some money, so like they have a cash flow thing where it could get approved in, let's say, the June meeting. If somebody will willing to do that, go to council in July, they could get access to the funds in August, and it wouldn't mess up their project at all.
Anything else? Meeting schedule. Jamie already started this a little bit with the 2 drafts. Did you want to say anything more?
Yeah, so just the 2 drafts look, one shows, I didn't print it up. One shows the meeting schedule with the application deadlines being quarterly, and other business can be submitted, you know, a couple days before. And then at the bottom of it, it shows the quarter, applications discussed, applications reviewed, and then funding decisions announced. And, you know, that was assuming a application cycle that starts on January, April, July, and October, September, October. If we wanted to go to something that was a quarterly cycle, but that was a little bit off quarter from what everyone else does as quarters, and there are pros and cons to that. You know, essentially, when our quarter starts on July 1, we may not know how much undesignated funds are rolling over yet because the accounts haven't closed yet. So we don't know what's left over from the previous year.
Will we know by the time that we make, like by September?
Usually by September we would know.
Yeah.
And what we have in undesignated now could cover Lathrop's. The request is for 80.
No, but it's in housing.
Oh,
It's,
right.
it's earmarked.
You're right. Never mind.
So it seems like from what we talked about before, most people were in favor of quarterly, which would lead me to believe that we'd want to go with the second meeting schedule draft. The meeting, to clarify, all the 12 meeting dates on the left of the top part would remain the same. That we would still meet every month because we would have, but that the part that would be different would be the grant submitted.
Yeah.
Um,
And then I think in years past, we had adjusted the schedule slightly around Thanksgiving and Christmas, but this year's schedule, the dates fell early enough in the month. Thanksgiving has 5 Thursdays. I'm sorry,
Yes.
November has 5 Thursdays this coming year, so we're like well outside of that range. And then there's the perennial, like, what do we do in July and August? Because everyone goes on vacation and it's hard to get quorums.
We'll just have to, we'll make it work.
But, you know,
Figure it out.
and, you know, where we're doing things on a rolling basis, it's not the end of the world when we skip a meeting or two.
No,
But on
that
a
isn't.
quarterly cycle and we miss July or August, I don't know how that affects the
We'll
schedule.
see how it plays out.
So,
I likely might not be able to make that April date because it's during school vacation. I believe I'll be away. There's a very qualified vice chair. So
also probably travels during April vacation.
that's true.
I
I
don't
don't
have
know.
any money to go anywhere.
We're not going far, but, so I don't want to change things around just on my account, but I just want to let you know that I'll probably be there. All right, any other further discussion of the calendar, meeting schedule? Do we need to vote on that? Is there any? Should we
Wait,
make
so
a
like-
Motion to approve the quarterly calendar.
I'll second.
great roll call?
Andy,
Aye.
Greg is not here, Jay's not here, Jessica,
Bye.
Joe?
Aye.
John's not here, Ken,
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
And Tom?
Aye.
Great, motion passes.
Excellent. Thank you for putting that together, Jamie. Appreciate it.
Good welcome.
Planning department, town lodging house. There's someone here to present, and
I'd like to put in the minutes that I'm recusing myself from this discussion as I work at Valley CDC and this is a project that I am actively working on.
thank you.
So this is, I think, the last thing on the agenda. If you want to stick around, you're obviously welcome to.
Stick in case there's questions, but I won't be speaking as a CPA member. Speaking as a Valley CDC staff person.
Okay. So let me get my page right. So back in June of last year, we applied for funding from the underutilized properties program with Valley CDC to get design development documents to restore the town lodging house. And it's located at 79 Oliver Street. Town lodging house is a historic property owned by the city. It's been used since 1890 for affordable housing to, back in when it was created, the residents would essentially work the farm for their room and board. And it was the Easthampton Port Farm. Back in, let's say, the 90s, that, well before that, I think in the 60s, the farming aspect stopped and the city started to lease out the fields. In the 90s, the city switched to leasing out the property to have someone else take care, to do all the work of the residents and things like that. The city has this historic property that it has a couple it has a historic preservation restriction, an affordable housing restriction on it, and the fields have agricultural preservation restrictions on it. Makes it a very difficult project to redevelop. We had a Southern Middlesex Opportunity Council leased the property for about 20 years and provided the social services and applicant intake and care for residents. They terminated their lease in 2022. The building has been in disrepair, and city and Valley are interested in working in a partnership to redevelop this property, to bring it back into a high quality standard for affordable housing, and eventually the city would turn the property over to Valley CDC as it exceeds the capabilities of the city to keep managing this property long term. What we're looking at now, we didn't get the underutilized properties program grant. The building, Easthampton isn't needy enough, and the building wasn't in bad enough shape.
Sorry, just to stop you for a moment.
Yes.
That was where the planning department in the past came to the CPA committee,
Yeah,
right?
so
And that was, when, just
June,
refresh,
it was about June.
this past June.
Yeah, it was about June. We applied
Okay.
for the program. The CPA
I remember
wrote
talking about
wrote a letter of support stating that they would set aside $100,000 and contribute to this grant
Okay.
if we got the grant. We didn't get the grant, but we are now pivoting to a different grant program. We're going to be using the Community Development Block Grant Program to apply for funds to get those design development documents. There's no match requirement for the Community Development Block Grant Program, but it funds the way the funding for the different programs work. They don't fund the same thing. So there's an archaeological survey that needs to happen. Let me back up a second. Part of the development plan is this house, this lodging house has 23 single room occupancy units in it. And the single room occupancy units it's essentially a boarding house, a common kitchen, common bathrooms. You get a lock on your door if you're a resident. That model of housing is very outdated. And we'd like to make the units better overall. We'd have small kitchenettes and bathrooms within each unit. That would obviously take away space from each of we'd have to knock down some walls to make each room a little bit bigger. There'd be a lot of work that has to go into that to make that happen. It would probably end up reducing the 23 units to about 12 units. That's too small a project for any affordable housing developer to take on because of tax credits and the way that the market works. You need about 30 units in order to make a project feasible. So part of that would be creating a new building in the back.
Oh, right. This
Um,
is the same plan though, right?
Same plan,
Yeah.
different funding source.
Okay.
In order to do that building in the back, because it's historic property, we need to get approval through Mass Historic to build anything on that site. We've working with Valley, Mass Historic was sent a proposal for this building. They said, okay, you need to do a archaeological survey of the site to make sure that there's nothing buried there, bodies specifically, but just any historic artifacts or anything like that. So we have a proposal from SWCA. They're a historic environmental consulting firm.
What's it stand for?
You had to ask.
Sorry, I'm anti-acronym.
They
I
used
think
to
it
be,
alienates people.
they used to be New England. They used to be New England Environmental, and were bought up by.
Not that big a deal, but
They don't.
they don't even say.
They don't say.
Don't worry about
It might be just the acronyms of the owners or something.
it. Keep going.
Yeah. So they submitted a proposal for just under $63,000 to do the archaeological investigations, essentially digging 45 pits in the
Test
ground.
pits, yeah, shovel
pits.
test pits.
And they're gonna find a lot of stones and brickwork and maybe some garbage, and who knows what else. They're gonna catalog what they find. They're gonna remove what they find and put together a small box for displaying what they find. And they're gonna submit the report to Mass Historic, and hopefully Mass Historic goes, great, you can build where you want to build.
Okay.
But we can't do anything more without getting this information. On top of that, the building is vacant, it's boarded up. There are concerns about just the continued degradation of the building between now and when we actually go out to construction. So we're looking for about $25,000 to be able to use that to maintain the structure, maintain the building in its in the state that, so it doesn't keep degrading over time with like humidities in the summer or freeze thaw in the winter. And then the remainder of what the request is, the $7,000 for a property line survey. Currently the city owns, it's a 65-acre property. When we go to transfer the property, we'll need to have essentially it needs to be its own piece of land that can be sold or transferred. And then $5,000 for legal expenses all related to the support of the transformation of this building, restoration of the building.
So to summarize, tell me if this is wrong or right. $100,000 was already approved by this committee for this exact project. That was for in conjunction with a grant that got denied. You're now reapplying for the exact same amount of money to take another swing at this a different way. Essentially, right?
Yeah.
And the project is essentially the same.
Same.
It's the same project that we deemed worthy of $100,000 then. Okay.
Right, but so the last time we came and we're asking for this letter of support and an earmark.
Right.
We were gonna come back if we got the grant. We didn't get the grant. We're coming back anyways.
I see. Right, that's true. We didn't actually give it, we didn't actually approve the money. We earmarked it. I got it. We earmarked it, but now, right, now you're saying you earmarked it for something we didn't get. Now we actually want it to try to do it a different way.
And also to note, the CDBG money can only be used to preserve the existing house. It can't be used for any of the other pre-development activities related to the new building, which the archaeological site examination is dealing with.
It's helpful for me because I was confused about why we why we had this money in the first place.
Mhm.
Like because we earmarked it and then it's coming back because you can't spend the money because that way that we approved it can't be done.
So it's not approved.
Right.
And it's just for $100,000. There's no other requests for more.
Not at
There
this
will
time.
be.
There will be more requests.
There always will be right these days.
So
All
we're
right.
estimating that the entire design development would be about $1 million. That would be for the existing building and the new building
Okay.
and the site work. And part of that grant and the Valley is going to be applying to CDAC for construction for the
For
design
pre-development money.
And so there'll probably be some match requirement that comes with that will be coming back to the CPA for funding. And then once construction is set to go, we'll be probably asking for additional funds. Because any affordable housing project that's financed by the state through the tax credits and things like that, they always need a local match. And the first place to look for that local match is always going to be CPA.
Andy.
Sorry, so what's the city's skin in this game? It seems to me that the CPA always gets asked to donate money or put money aside for projects for the city. Was the city contributing anything to any of this?
CPA is the city? Is that,
Well, I guess I draw a little, the CPA is I'm talking about the city in general, that city has its own account. CPA is just kind of part of that whole thing, right? Maybe I'm misunderstanding the whole matter of the CPA. I kind of thought that was more of the people versus the city. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, so the community development block grant program we're applying for will fund the design development for the existing building, and then, like I said, I forget what CDAC stands for. It's like
Corporation Economic Development, something.
Assistance
Corporation, something. Community Economic Assistance Development Corp.
But the city is using staff time to apply for these grants. DPW has been involved in maintaining building and boarding it up and checking on it when the fire alarms go off at midnight. And
but there's nothing in the regular budget that the city puts aside. There's nothing set aside.
There's nothing in the budget for this building. There hasn't been anything in the budget for this building other than water and sewer, and I think that stopped in like 2017.
Okay. All right.
So, that's part of the reason why we are here, is because there's no budget for this building, and the city has not put money into the building other than through grants since going back at least to the 90s.
Okay.
And the city owns the building.
The city owns the building.
I mean,
It's on the
we
national-
have a responsibility to do something.
It's on the National Register of Historic Places. It was the last operating town pork farm in the country.
In the country?
Yeah.
I remember the story. I remember being really moved by the story in the original presentation.
And right now,
I
it's
like
like,
stories.
it's been neglected for so long. The people that were living there before Southern Middlesex Opportunity Council moved out were living in not a great place to be living. If you walked through that building, it looked like people were living in a vacant building. It's just not. It's not quality housing. It's not a place that we should be using without significant improvements.
Well, it sounds to me we're still waiting for the new CDBG grant and other things. Are we supposed to make an appropriation tonight? Or are we supposed to, what is this for? Are we still waiting for to see if more funds come in?
No, so we are applying for the block grant regardless. And like I said, there's no match for the block grant.
Right.
This is for additional activities that need to happen concurrently
that the block grant can't cover.
that the block grant can't cover. If we wait until we get the block grant to come back, that will just delay, because the archaeological we can't do anything with the archaeological investigation until we have those funds. That's not going to be covered by a block grant regardless.
The project's essentially on hold until we can do this archaeological site investigation.
It's 45,000.
$63,000 to have somebody go out and dig with a shovel, 50 test pits and look at artifacts. So,
I'll do that for like 20. Seriously, go tomorrow.
so,
Yeah, but what you didn't see is the 70-page document that was submitted to Mass Historic that was the archaeological investigation plan and is currently getting their approval.
right.
Hopefully.
So we're waiting to hear from Mass Historic. We should be hearing within the next 30 days. If the committee is willing to fund this, then Valley would be the project manager on behalf of the city. So it's a city property. We're working as basically their project manager on this to see whether we can even put a new building there. So you can spend $63,000 and we have a beautiful proposed building that has been architecturally rendered and designed, but we don't know whether they'll even allow us the ability to do that. And the project is financially unfeasible. It's just a 12-unit project,
How many units would it be total,
around 30.
including the
Including
the old building?
Old building and new building combined to be around 30.
30, all affordable.
All affordable family housing. So a range of studio apartments in the old house, in the original house, and then a combination of 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms in the new building.
So this is, I mean, while this is new-ish, it's not totally new in that we have approved this amount of money before. When we were looking at the budget, we were talking about the budget, we essentially said we had no money because this was already there. I see this as, things that are owned by the city, I think are hard because we have a responsibility to it. It's like it's hard to say no to something that we can't not act on something in this, like we can't just let something deteriorate. I mean, city can let something deteriorate and go with. That to me doesn't seem prudent. Seems like this is a good path forward. Because we've already, I think we need to start our quarterly calendar, by voting on things pretty soon. But I think that this is because this was already allocated, I could see a reason to move forward on this sooner. Other thoughts from people on the committee? Really, we're only talking about
Given
5 people.
just prior to me getting here, this committee just appropriated $600,000 for land acquisition. It seems like doing stuff on land that we currently own is prudent. Kind of want to get into this hole digging business because it seems like a pretty sweet deal, but
Yeah,
I'm all for it. I have no objection. I'm happy to make the case to the finance committee.
So we've already appropriated. So I mean, when we talk about our low money, we have what, 120? Is that because we've already appropriated? Is that already theoretically missing from the budget line, or is it going to be taken out of the 120 we have reserved in housing?
So it is already on, if you look down here, it's the third last line.
Right.
So it's already shown as an earmark,
Okay.
but it's not, because it
in the
was not,
same way that this is for the future years.
But I guess the bottom line, so if we tonight appropriated that money, we have it.
the money is there.
The money's there because we earmarked it before.
At the risk of also being the grumpy one here, I will, I think it's great to have a sense of preserving historic, but I think at some point, I'm not saying this isn't one because we have a wonderful partner who's interested in doing it, but I think people, especially you can get to the fault of maybe this is the time to say we should sell this. No, I'm not saying, but I just wanted to put out that there is a thought to how long do we spend money on something that may not be viable to maintain. Now, not saying this case because we have a partnership that wants to be, but I get cautious about, well, it's ours, we should hold on to it until it drags us into the.
Yeah.
So I mean, we've done the procurement department's done a valuation of the property, and it's actually, the current valuation is less than $35,000 for the property. Because this building has a historic preservation restriction on it, it's listed on the National Register of Historic Places. It has a affordable housing restriction on it. So the only thing it can be used for until 2030, when the restriction expires, is affordable housing. The surrounding land can only be used for farming. It has, and then because of it needs, if we were to just restore it without improving the units, but just like bringing it back to like the necessary minimum maintenance needed to bring up, it was over $1.5 million in 2020. So that would be like $3 million with the way the construction costs have gone up and the materials cost. So essentially, if we were to try to we wouldn't be able to sell this to anybody because of the restrictions and the state of the building.
Right.
So
Yeah, it is limited.
I mean, so it's not like the public schools where we could essentially, there was no restrictions on them and they're in the downtown,
Right.
and you could redevelop them as housing or office space or commercial, or you can knock them down. There were like a lot of different options available for this. Like, there's really nothing that we can do with this site other than affordable housing or watch the building just keep deteriorating.
But I do really appreciate you saying that, because I think that mentality is going to be important moving forward for all the things that are coming, to be able to say, this is worthy, and maybe we still don't do it. Ready up? Andy, Ken? Does anybody want to make? I mean, we could, because this has already been earmarked. I mean, it would be helpful. I mean, for project just stalled, right? I mean, essentially, you're hoping we vote on this tonight.
It'd be great if you vote on it tonight, and but I
wouldn't do that given what we're dealing with, other than the fact that we've already earmarked it. Like, it feels like we've already, like, other people, everybody who was at the meeting in June had a chance to hear this project, and now it's not exactly the same money going to the exact place, but essentially it's $100,000 to this project, to the value of this project. And so because of that, I could see voting on this tonight. Does anybody want to make a motion? Does anybody feel like they could do that?
I'll make a motion. I'm a little clear. How much should that motion be included, or should I just say
we would like for you to be appropriate the full amount, the $100,000
okay,
for
I'll make a motion to
redevelopment.
appropriate $100,000 for the town lodging house pre-development work.
Second.
All right. Roll call.
Andy,
Aye.
Greg's absent, Jay's absent, Jessica has abstained, Joe,
Yes.
John is absent, Ken,
Aye.
Scott.
Aye.
And Tom.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
There we go. There's the 5. All right. Thank you, planning. And
Thank you, CPA.
Before we adjourn, I'm just looking at the budget. One request, Jamie, I don't know if this is possible. if there's any way, I think what's gonna be really helpful for the committee moving forward is if there's any way to graphically show, like, I don't know if you can turn these in, like, something that we could see to say, this is what we've already, I mean, I know this is not, like, I don't know, maybe I'm a visual person, but to be able to see graphically, like, this is how much of this pie we've spent in 2025. This is what we've already spent in 20, like, we're already voting money out. And I think even as we move forward, if there's a way to just visualize, like, what we have, what we anticipate and what we already have, I mean, what we've already allocated, that's going to be really valuable. Does that make sense?
I will try to,
You know, are you an Excel wizard?
yeah, I'll try to come,
do
I'll
it.
try to come up with like something that shows.
Maybe it's even by like year. Maybe it's like,
So the problem is that what we're looking at here is not the budget, and it's also not the expense. It's a report that I put together. It's not like the expense report. It's not this year's. So if we just looked at what this year's budget is, it would look different because
Yeah.
it wouldn't show what's in the undesignated account. Because the undesignated account is like cash that we have on hand.
yeah,
Whereas the budget is the monies that we're anticipating to get. So the more I can like group things together differently and try to do something visual, and you can tell me if you like it or
Right.
if that works.
I hope that doesn't seem unreasonable. I think it's more, I'm just thinking it's going to become more, it's really going to become more important for us to really have an understanding of
So I mean,
how much money we have, like, we're spending money we have, you know, out into the future.
Maybe it's by percentages rather than dollar amounts. Maybe if you translate that into
Percentage
like
of,
percentage of available funds, like percentage of available funds for each of the designated pots plus the total or something. I don't
and
know.
it's an estimate because I mean, you know, how much, like we have $200,000 we're voted on for 2026 for Ferry Street. We have no idea what our budget's going to be in 2026, but maybe we say, you know, given 2023 numbers, this would be this percentage. And even, I don't know, just looking at it per year and looking at the, like, to get, I just think any tool, to back up, any tools that help this committee have an understanding of how everything we're voting on is going to affect the larger pie, I think is going to be really helpful moving forward because it matters now.
Mhm.
That's all.
So specifically, you're like asking about these set asides, well, not really set asides, but was appropriated for 2025 and 2026 because $200,000 is going to be about, I don't know, a quarter, somewhere between a third and a quarter of what we're expecting to take in revenue.
Yeah.
Last year our budget was $1 million, so 200,000 would have been a fifth.
Yeah.
That's what you're looking at?
Yeah, I think what I'd like is if someone's sitting here at this table and is applying, that as we're talking about it as a committee, if we had a pie chart up there that could say, look, we've already allocated this quarter of that affordable housing pie, and you're asking for the next half, you know what I mean? That they could have an understanding and we could have a common understanding of what that looks like. I think sometimes, I just don't want anybody to feel like anything's opaque. Like, I don't want it to feel like there's a real clear, like, understanding of how, and this is, I don't mean to suggest this is, I think for people that are coming here as an applicant that have never been here before, for them to have a sense of what they're asking affects other things would be valuable visually.
Look at the track.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Anything else before we adjourn?
Oh, just one thing. We've got finance committee, next week. There's gonna be two things coming forward that I was in the room when you were discussing them, but I was not on the committee.
Oh, yeah.
So if one of the two of you
I
would,
will be there.
okay, then that would be awesome.
What days are you meeting?
Wednesday, 5:30.
Let's see. Okay. Great. I will keep my eye out for the agenda. Has that been submitted already?
I don't know. I'll check. Awesome.
Anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
In honor of Jay.
I love
That
that.
Your turn.
We got a vote.
We got a
We had a
vote.
roll call.
Roll call.
Sorry, Jamie. Actually, if we're all here, we don't have to roll call. It's only when there's people online, right?
Yeah, but what happens when
Thanks,
you
Sandy
vote
and
no
Ken. Just
to
kidding.
adjourn?
We just sit here.
The recording just keeps going. I noticed,
I know,
raise the
he's
hand.
raising his hand over
He's
and over
raising
and
his
over
hand.
again.
All right, Andy,
Aye, sorry.
Jess,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Ken,
Aye.
Scott.
Aye.
Tom.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.